Chapter 2. How do you make holy water?
Make sure to burn the hell out of it.
In the world of the Nephilim, there's a timeless adage that rings true: all the stories are true. But in the case of this tale, that saying holds more weight than ever before. In the quaint city of Falmouth, nestled within an old, run-down apartment house, resides a man unlike any other. While he may appear human, his true essence is that of a warlock with skin that shimmers like water. What is his name, you ask? Jan Tregeagle. Now, if you're familiar with British folklore, you may recognize that name. In the ghost stories of old, Jan Tregeagle is portrayed as a Faustian figure, a lawyer who, driven by greed and ambition, sells his soul to the devil. His tale is one of tragedy and deceit, marked by the murder of his wife and the theft of an orphan's inheritance. Jan did not sell his soul to the devil. Instead, he is one of the Elder Curses, a rare and powerful warlock born from the bloodline of the princes of hell, specifically, the offspring of Leviathan, the ancient sea serpent. Traditionally, there can only be 9 Elder Curses at a time, each representing the pinnacle of demonic lineage. Jan's existence defies convention, standing as a testament to the unfathomable depths of his infernal heritage. But Jan's story is more than just a tale of dark lineage. It's intertwined with the actions of Sinra, the enigmatic sister of Magnus Bane and daughter of Asmodeus. Sinra's quest to liberate the princes of hell from their entrapment in distant realms sets in motion a chain of events that will alter the fabric of the supernatural world forever. Jan sits in his apartment in the lap of luxury, while the outside world sees only a rundown structure. That is just the glamour that Jan put in place. In reality, it's a luxurious mansion, a haven of comfort and extravagance. Within the walls of his ostentatious abode, Jan revels in the lap of luxury, surrounded by the trappings of wealth and power. A heavy knock reverberated through Jan's luxurious apartment, interrupting the tranquility of his solitude. With a deep sigh, he rose from his comfortable seat, steeling himself for the inevitable disturbance. As he swung open the door, prepared to unleash a torrent of anger upon the intruder, his words faltered, frozen in his throat. Before him stood a figure of awe-inspiring presence, his very essence radiating power and authority. It was none other than his own father, the Prince of Hell, Leviathan, manifested in human form. For a moment, Jan stood in stunned silence, his mind reeling with disbelief at the sight before him. He had never expected to come face to face with the embodiment of his infernal lineage, let alone within the confines of his own home. As the weight of the moment settled upon him, Jan's thoughts raced, grappling with the implications of his father's sudden appearance. What could possibly have brought Leviathan to his doorstep? And what role would he play in the unfolding saga of Jan's destiny?
Are you not going to invite me in, my child?
Leviathan inquired, his voice dripping with regal authority and a hint of disdain. Jan's response was a stammer.
Huh. What?
Leviathan let out an exasperated sigh, his patience wearing thin as he brushed past the stunned Jan with an air of superiority.
One would have thought your mother would have taught you how to treat a prince of hell,
he remarked, his tone laced with scorn.
Speaking of which, who was your mother again, my child?
As Jan's father, Leviathan, entered the opulent interior of his son's apartment, he found himself enveloped in an atmosphere that echoed the majesty of the sea itself. The walls were adorned with intricate murals depicting vast oceanic vistas, where waves crashed against rocky shores under the glow of a shimmering moon. The furniture, crafted from polished driftwood and adorned with nautical motifs, exuded a sense of maritime elegance. Seashells and coral adorned every surface, while delicate glass sculptures of sea creatures sparkled in the soft ambient light. In the center of the room, a grand aquarium stood as the focal point, its glass walls teeming with a kaleidoscope of vibrant marine life. Leviathan's gaze was drawn to the mesmerizing dance of the colorful fish, their graceful movements echoing the fluidity of water itself. The air was infused with the scent of salt and sea breeze, transporting Leviathan to the depths of the ocean with each breath. Soft strains of oceanic melodies filled the room, adding to the ambience of serenity and tranquility. Jan's heart pounded in his chest as he watched his father, Leviathan, stride confidently into his apartment. A tumult of conflicting emotions surged within him, fear and awe as the door clicked shut.
Pardon me, but can I ask you a question? Do you love comic books, but you just don't have the time to read them? Well, do I got a podcast for you. Nerds Through Comics, presented by the Red Cornish Ranger, takes present and some old comics and adapts them into an audio drama for you, the listeners, to enjoy. So, if you love comics as much as I do, go check out Nerds Through Comics on all your podcast stations.
Mark sat at his desk, surrounded by stacks of reports and requests from his team. The air in his office was heavy with the weight of responsibility, the quiet hum of activity serving as a constant reminder of the demands of his position. Suddenly, the shrill ring of an old-fashioned black phone shattered the silence, cutting through the monotony of paperwork. Mark's gaze lifted from his papers, his brow furrowing in apprehension. There was something ominous about the sound of that particular phone ringing, a sense of foreboding that sent a shiver down his spine. With a sense of trepidation, Mark reached out and lifted the receiver to his ear, the line crackling with static. As he listened to the voice on the other end, his expression grew increasingly grave, his mind racing with the implications of the message he had received.
Hold on, Alec. What do you mean, Leviathan is in Cornwall?
Mark's voice was laced with disbelief as he leaned forward, gripping the receiver tightly. Alec's response came through the line, his tone urgent.
Yes, there's a warlock named Jan Tregeagle here. He's been a resident of Cornwall for as long as I can remember. Rumour has it, he once bidded for the position of High Warlock, but he was ultimately defeated by the current High Warlock.
Mark's eyes widened in shock as he processed Alec's words.
What?
He exclaimed, his voice rising in alarm. Jumping to his feet, he paced the length of his office, his mind racing with the implications of Alec's revelation.
Leviathan is the father to Jan? That would make him an elder curse.
The gravity of the situation hit Mark like a thunderbolt, sending a chill down his spine. The presence of an elder curse in Cornwall was a cause for grave concern, and Mark knew that he would need to act swiftly to address the potential threat it posed to the safety of the Shadowhunter community. With determination etched upon his features, he hung the receiver back on the base of the phone and walked over, picking up his cell phone. In days gone by, the Clave would have frowned upon using cell phones, opting instead for Mark to send fire messages to all the members of his institute. However, with Alec running things and being the Parabatai to Jace, Simon Lovelace, the Parabatai of Clay Fairchild Harndale, was able to convince Alec to embrace the modern age. As a result, all institutes had been updated with computers, and all members were equipped with their own cell phones. With a sense of urgency pulsing through his veins, Mark sent out a blast text to all members of the institute, instructing them to report back and meet in the war room at once. As responses flooded in, confirming their readiness, Mark wasted no time. He turned on his heel and strode purposefully down the hall to the library, his mind already racing with plans and strategies. Entering the library, Mark wasted no time. He immediately set to work, pulling every book he could find on Leviathan and the Elder Curses from the shelves. Dust swirled in the air as he sifted through the ancient tomes, his fingers tracing over the faded spines and weathered pages. Each book held a piece of the puzzle, a fragment of knowledge that could prove invaluable in their fight against the looming threat. With each volume he added to the growing stack at his side, Mark felt a renewed sense of determination coursing through him.
Riddle me this. What do you get when you get 3 Power Ranger fans who also write Power Ranger fan fictions and upload them on separate podcasts and YouTube channels, and you happen to put the 3 of them together and they form a unique Power Ranger storyline? Here's your answer. You get the 3 Ranger Bros, who is myself, Ty Tiger, the Red Cornish Ranger, Mark, and the Cosplay Dude 637. We are the 3 Ranger Bros, and we came up with the idea called Power Rangers Global, a storyline where 4 different Rangers from different universes team up to save Universe 2118, a universe ruled by the gods. Now, if you want to hear Power Rangers Global, you can find it on Tiger Tales, the YouTube channel, and Nerds Through Comics, the podcast, and you can find that podcast anywhere that podcast can be listened to. So one more time, that's Power Rangers Global on Tiger Tales, the YouTube channel, and Nerds Through Comics, the podcast.
As the Shadowhunters of the Cornwall Institute gathered around the carved wooden table with the true map of the world carved in it with the Shadowhunter home country of Idris, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Ace, looking every bit the seasoned warrior, sat with his arms crossed, his demeanor bristling with impatience.
This better be damn important. I was tracking a rogue werewolf.
He snapped, his frustration evident. Daisy, ever the voice of reason, rolled her eyes at Ace's outburst.
You're always tracking something these days. And you have no time for us.
She pouted, her tone tinged with reproach. Isla chimed in, her voice calm and measured.
It works for us. We were just in the training room,
she said, casting a sidelong glance at Kylie, who simply nodded in agreement, reclining in her chair. Logan, his demeanor tense and defensive, interjected gruffly.
Yeah, well, I was patrolling the shadow market.
He barked, his eyes flashing with defiance.
Why? There was no report of trouble there,
Daisy questioned, her brow furrowed in confusion.
You can't trust downworlders.
Logan spat, his words dripping with disdain. Kylie couldn't help but snicker at Logan's comment.
You sound like that Valentine guy from the history books,
she remarked, her voice tinged with amusement. Mark entered the room carrying a stack of books, his expression serious.
Valentine Morgeston was a madman and a terrorist. His views were wrong, and yet his legacy persists in our history books. Why is that?
He questioned, his voice heavy with concern.
People need to know their past so they do not repeat it, and we, the Nephilim, are no different,
Daisy explained, her voice calm but resolute. Logan's face flushed with anger at Daisy's words, his fists clenching at his sides.
The Kingsmill family in every one of the battles against Valentine and his bastard of a son. I'm not saying he was good or just, but he wasn't wrong about downworlders,
he retorted, his voice dripping with bitterness. Daisy countered, her gaze unwavering.
If you believe that, why did you go to the academy? It's led by a former Shadowhunter and a downworlder,
she pointed out, her tone cutting like a knife. Logan's face turned even redder with rage, but he remained silent, his arms crossed defiantly as he slumped back in his chair. Mark, sensing the tension in the room, intervened before the situation could escalate further.
I didn't call you all here to talk about politics. We have a very big problem,
he stated firmly, laying the stack of books down on the table and taking his seat, his expression grave. Ace sat up, his interest piqued at the mention of a problem.
What have you got for us, boss man?
He inquired, his tone eager. Mark sighed, shaking his head.
First off, I asked you to stop calling me that,
he replied wearily. Ace smirked, undeterred.
Not gonna happen, boss man,
he quipped, his smirk widening. Mark rolled his eyes before continuing.
Very well. I got a call from Alec today,
he explained, his voice serious as he relayed the details of the situation to his team. As Mark finished speaking, a sense of bewilderment settled over the members of the team, each of them processing the gravity of the revelation.
An elder curse here,
Daisy murmured, her voice trailing off in disbelief.
Bugger off about the curse. What about the fact that the Prince of Hell is here?
Ace interjected, his tone laced with incredulity.
I thought the princes could not come to this reality fully,
Kylie asked, her brow furrowed in confusion.
That was until Cinera happened,
Mark replied, his tone grave as he recalled the events that had shaken the Shadowhunter world.
Yeah, about that. How can a prince of hell have 2 elder curses?
Isla questioned, her expression reflecting the collective concern of the group.
Once the New York Shadowhunters get their hands on her, I bet they'll beat it. I mean, ask her.
Ace responded, his voice tinged with anger.
I think the most important question is, what are Jan and Leviathan planning?
The prospect of confronting a prince of hell and the mysteries surrounding the elder curses weighed heavily on the minds of the Shadowhunters of the Cronwall Institute.
Psst! Hey, you! Yeah, you! No, you right there! Are you a fan of Power Rangers? Do you like listening to people just randomly talk about all kinds of subjects? Well then, I got the podcast for you. Zero to Hero, the podcast. Jim and Billy, the bulk and skull of podcasting, talk about everything from Power Rangers to Gundams to who has the better hairstyle. These guys don't care. It doesn't matter to these guys. They will talk about it. You need to go check them out. That's Zero to Hero, the podcast. On Apple, Google, Spotify, you name it, they're on there. So go check them out. Trust me, you'll enjoy it.
At Pendennis Castle in Falmouth, Leviathan strode through the ancient halls with a sense of dark purpose, his son Jan trailing behind him like a shadow. The air crackled with an aura of malevolence as they made their way to the chapel, the echoes of their footsteps reverberating off the stone walls.
Why are we here, Father?
Jan's voice quivered with apprehension, his eyes darting nervously around the dimly lit corridors.
There is someone here I seek to speak with.
Leviathan replied, his tone laced with menace as they entered the solemn sanctuary of the chapel. Leviathan's lip curled into a sneer as he surveyed the scene before him.
These useless mortals with their pointless ceremonies,
he says, and with a low growl of contempt, he raised his hand, and with a flick of his wrist, the pulpit went hurtling through the air, crashing into the wall with a deafening splintering of wood. Leviathan's eyes gleamed with malevolent delight as he tapped the back wall of the chapel 3 times with his finger, the sound echoing ominously in the silent chamber. With a click, the wall slid open, revealing a hidden room beyond. A wicked smile spread across his lips as he stepped through the threshold, Jan trailing behind him. The room they entered was a sorcerer's sanctuary, filled with an array of arcane tomes and magical ingredients. At its center, encased in what appeared to be glass, lay a young man with shocking blonde hair, adorned in regal hues of purple and gold. Jan's eyes widened in astonishment as he took in the sight before him.
Who is this, Father?
Jan asked, his voice tinged with curiosity and apprehension.
He is the son of an old friend. I believe the mortals called him Mordred.
Leviathan replied, his tone laced with a hint of malice as he laid a hand on the glass enclosure. But as his touch made contact, he recoiled in pain, his hand burning from the touch of the glass.
This Adamus!
He snarls.
The stone of heaven.
Jan breathed, his shock evident as he gazed upon the shimmering surface of the glass.
I have never seen so much of it in one place.
This, my son, is why I brought you here,
Leviathan declared, his eyes gleaming with dark purpose.
Now free him!
This podcast is a production of the 3 Ranger Bros Studios, in association with Zero to Hero, the podcast. Thank you all for listening to that story. I hope you enjoyed it. Just a reminder that all my fanfictions are just that, fanfictions, and does not mean to infringe on the mainstream continuity that it's from. Now, I'd like to take a little bit of time to thank all those that support me. First off, you have the 3 Ranger Bros Studio, which consists of myself, CosplayDude637, my Parabatai and dear friend, Ty Tiger, with all his YouTube channels, Tiger Tales, and his new podcast, the Tiger Nexus Podcast. Then, of course, last but definitely not least, we have Mark, the Red Cornish Ranger, with his podcast, Nerds Through Comics. And then there's the guys at Zero to Hero, the podcast. Jim and Billy, the bulk and skull of podcasting. Anything nerdy you think you have ever talked about, I guarantee they have an episode about it. So, definitely go check them out. Then, we have Jared over on If You Give a Dad a Podcast. An amazing guy, a dad, like myself, that just loves talking to nerdy people about every subject. So definitely go give him a listen also. Then there's Jacob, aka the Iron Avenger, on TikTok and Instagram. We also have to give a shout out to Ben, the Baker Ranger. And last but not least, there is Tony, our good friend. And an honorable mention to the late, great Rebel Ranger, Sam. We love you, we miss you. Every person I just mentioned is a member of the Zero to Hero Network. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of time to mention some of the friends of the Zero to Hero Network. First off, we have Casey from the Mighty Morphin Conspiracy Theories, A-Crown from the Author's Crown YouTube channel, Johnson of Western Strike, Rob, aka Lightning Collector 2021, James, better known as Beauty_Baba Yaga, Justin the Green Spartan Ranger, and Michael and Nathan of the Power Trip. Everyone I just named has been a huge supporter to me and my podcast, and if you can, go give them a follow. It would mean the world to me. Thanks a lot. Until next time, guys. Later days.